I was 22 years old and recently out of a relationship that had lasted almost 5 years. The apartment felt too small, the silence too loud, so I decided I needed space, alone, off-grid, surrounded by nothing but trees and water. My old camping gear still smelled faintly of smoke and pine resin when I dug it out of the closet. I packed my tent, a cooler of food, a flashlight, and a small hatchet. By noon, I was behind the wheel of my pickup, the road unraveling like a ribbon of cracked gray through miles of forest. I'd camped at this lake before, a quiet place off the state highway, but this time I wanted something different, something even more remote. Using an old forest map I'd found online, I spotted a narrow side road that wound deeper into the woods, skirting the far end of the lake. There were no camp markings, no trails, just wilderness. That was the appeal. An hour later, the road turned to dirt and then to little more than a pair of ruts through damp, leaf-covered ground. My tires crunched over branches until finally the trees opened into a tiny cove, a pale crescent of sand framed by shadows. The air smelled sweet and clean, and the surface of the lake looked like polished glass. No boats, no voices, just the low hum of insects. I killed the engine. The sudden silence settled heavy over me. For a moment, I felt relief, the kind that comes from knowing no one expects anything from you. Then, out of habit, I scanned the tree line. The woods were so dense that even the midday light looked dim as it filtered through the canopy. I should have felt peaceful, but something about the stillness made me uneasy, like the forest was holding its breath, waiting. The afternoon slipped by quietly. I wandered along the lakeshore, my boots crunching on twigs and pebbles, the air cool enough to carry that faint metallic smell of water. Every turn of the shoreline revealed more stillness. No footprints, no wrappers, not even the echo of a distant motor. Just me and the muted ripple of the lake brushing the sand. By sunset, the horizon burned orange behind the trees. I unpacked my tent and pitched it by the tree line, close enough to the fire pit I'd dug earlier. The ritual of camping came back easily. Boil water, stir in noodles, crack open a beer. The flames flickered gold against the tent's fabric, and for the first time in weeks, I started to feel something like peace. That's when I heard it. A low voice, close, almost conversational, said, "Are you comfortable out here?" I froze. The words were so gentle, they barely rose above the lake's whisper, but they sliced through the stillness like a breath on the back of my neck. I turned sharply, my beer nearly spilling. A man stood just beyond the firelight, maybe 50, tall, shoulders slightly hunched. His clothes looked frayed, but not dirty, like he'd been living out here a while, yet with some odd sense of purpose. His face was hard to read in the half-light. I remember the glint of his eyes, pale and steady. Hello?" I managed, forcing a weak smile. He didn't smile back. He just tilted his head slightly, as if trying to decide whether I was real. Then he stepped forward, just enough for the fire to catch him fully. Something about him felt out of place. Not threatening, exactly, but wrong. The way a sound might be half a note off-key. "Didn't think anyone came out this far anymore," he said. His voice was rough, like dry leaves rubbed together. The hairs on my arms stood up despite the fire's warmth. For a while, neither of us said anything. The man just stood there, staring at the fire like it was the only thing that mattered. I shifted on my log, trying to find words that didn't sound forced. Finally, I asked, "You want to sit? I've got extra food, just noodles, but it's hot." He gave a small nod and lowered himself beside the fire. The light flickered across his face, angular with a few days' gray stubble. His eyes looked washed out, almost reflective. We sat there, quiet, except for the crackle of sap and the occasional pop of a branch in the flames. I tried again, asking if he was camping nearby, but he didn't answer. Maybe he didn't hear me, or maybe he just didn't care to explain himself. The silence stretched so long it started to feel alive, like the forest itself was listening. After a few minutes, I decided to grab another beer, partly to break the tension, partly to give myself an excuse to look away. I ducked into my tent, rummaged in the cooler, felt the welcome chill of aluminum. When I stepped back out, he was gone. No sound, no shifting leaves, no footsteps, just the fire, burning steady, and the same ring of trees pressing close around the camp. "Hello?" I called out, voice catching in the cold air. Nothing. Not even the frogs had resumed their croaking. For a moment, it struck me that I hadn't heard him leave. Not the crunch of gravel, not the brush of branches, just gone. The thought tightened my chest. Then I let out a shaky laugh, telling myself he'd probably wandered off to his own camp. Still, I found my eyes drifting to the tree line every few minutes as I drank that second beer. The night sky was brilliant, full of stars, clear and sharp, but I couldn't shake the feeling that someone else was still out there, watching. I don't know how much time passed after he disappeared. Maybe half an hour. The fire had burned low, and the night air had that thick, heavy quality that makes every sound travel just a little too far. I was staring into the flames, letting my thoughts drift, when something darker than the trees caught my eye. A shape, still and upright, stood just beyond the last reach of the firelight. My grip tightened around the beer can. The silhouette was unmistakable. The same man, same posture, just standing there, half hidden by the trees. The fire crackled quietly, throwing shifting light across the sand. "Do you need something?" I called out. My voice sounded harsher than I meant to. No answer. He didn't move, not even flinch. A wave of irritation pushed through the unease. Maybe he thought this was funny, some local trying to spook campers for kicks. "Look," I said, standing up. "I came out here to be alone, all right? Please, just go." Still, nothing. The shape didn't turn or gesture. It only stood there, a perfect shadow framed between two trees. I grabbed a log from the pile and tossed it into the fire. Sparks jumped up, bursting into a wash of orange light. When I glanced back toward the tree line, he was gone. The space where he'd stood was empty, too empty. No sound of footsteps, no rustling brush, nothing but the faint crackle of resin burning off the wood. My pulse thudded in my ears, and for a long minute I couldn't make myself sit back down. I wanted to believe I'd imagined it, but the strangest part was how sure I was, how every sense in me screamed that he'd truly been watching. Sometime after midnight, I woke to the sound of breathing. Not the soft rhythm of wind through canvas, not the snuffle of an animal. Breathing, heavy and uneven, just beyond the thin fabric of my tent. My blood went cold. For a moment I stayed frozen, listening. It was close, one exhale after another, slow and deliberate, like whoever it was wanted me to know they were there. "Hey!" I shouted, sitting bolt upright. The breathing stopped instantly. Every sound outside died with it. The forest went impossibly still, as if the world had hit pause. I grabbed my pocket knife and my phone, thumb trembling as I flicked on the flashlight. The beam cut through the darkness as I unzipped the tent and stumbled out. Nothing. The fire had burned down to a weak orange glow, barely more than embers. The air was freezing, My own breath came out in quick bursts of white mist. "I know you're out there!" I yelled. My voice sounded too loud, swallowed almost immediately by the trees. No reply. I added logs to the fire, hurrying more than I meant to, waiting until the new flames licked up enough to push the shadows back. Then I stood there for what must have been an hour, knife in one hand, flashlight in the other, listening. Every so often I heard movement, slow, deliberate footsteps circling just beyond the ring of light. Whenever I swung the flashlight toward the sound, the noise stopped. I yelled again, threatened, cursed, anything to remind myself I wasn't helpless. But whoever was out there didn't answer, didn't flee, just waited. The fire snapped, throwing sparks into the blackness. I caught myself whispering, not sure if to the intruder or to the forest, "What do you want?" And from somewhere deep in the trees, a branch cracked, sharp and heavy, like something stepping closer. As the first gray hint of dawn touched the lake, I'd had enough. My nerves were shot, my eyes gritty from staying awake all night. Whatever was out there, a madman, an animal, or something else entirely, I didn't want to be around to figure it out. I packed fast, hands shaking as I tore down the tent and shoved everything into the back of the truck. Every few seconds, I stopped to listen. The woods were quiet again, but not peaceful, the kind of quiet that waits. When I finally started the engine, the sound roared through the trees like a rescue. Gravel spit from under the tires as I pulled away from the campsite, refusing to look back. My pulse didn't ease until the narrow dirt road started widening into something that looked like civilization. Then, halfway down the road, a flicker of movement caught my eye in the rearview mirror. A shape stood at the edge of the tree line by the lake, tall, motionless, watching. The same figure, unmistakable even from this far. I blinked, and he was gone. I didn't stop. I didn't even slow down. All I remember is gripping the wheel until my knuckles turned white, staring straight ahead, trying not to wonder if he'd actually been there, or if part of me had brought something back from that lake.